with like the coaching side, like that's been a really cool way to kind of like help individuals, right? Because again, I get a lot of people that come in, they're like, I want to get back into running. I had this injury. When someone has an issue, instead of them making a decision of like, I'm just going to run through this, you can help them decide like, maybe that's not the best idea. And I would say, do this one run and then you have an injury, like the time off that you might have to take will be a bigger negative impact than missing the one run.
Today's guest is a powerhouse in the world of physical therapy and running. Our guest wears many hats. He's an orthopedic physical therapist, a running coach, and even a race director. He's deeply committed to building active communities and helping people not just recover, but thrive, whether through his work at Dynamic Performance Therapy, coaching at Climb Above Endurance, or leading the River City Running Club. Our guest is all about promoting movement and outdoor activity. He believes that physical therapists have a unique role in not only treating patients, but also in preventing chronic health issues by engaging with their communities. Today, our guest on Orthostatic is Michael Borst. Michael Borst, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You have a pretty diverse professional background. I'm going to go through it first. PT, physical therapist, makes sense. Running coach and race director. So those things I can see some crossover, but obviously some differences. How do all those different roles actually feed into each other? And then my follow-up question will be, how do you balance those things?
It's all a good question. It all kind of fed into each other actually here in lacrosse when I started getting into just our running community in general, right? So I went to undergrad and grad school at UW La Crosse, and I liked running. And so I would get involved with different running groups, and I started to just meet a lot of people and was like trying to get more and more involved with things. So I started a trail event with a couple of friends. We were like, hey, we should have a trail race because La Crosse, we're right by the Mississippi River. We have these beautiful bluffs and hills and awesome public space that's like right next to town that has amazing world-class trails. And we're like, we should have a running event here. So we started a 25K, 50K race. And it has kind of taken off. This is actually coming up at the end of October is our 10th year with it.
Good
and
for
so
you.
That was kind of like this start. It was like this vision of, an awesome running community in La Crosse. And then another friend of mine started a running specialty store. So I got more involved with it on that end. And that was all while I was in school.
Wow.
And then coming out of school, it was honestly just a natural lead into really the private practice world and working with a lot of athletes, because if you are already in the community, it's easy. People are like, they associate you with the sport that they love. And so they like, oh, hey, you must know what you're doing. So I'll come talk to you.
It sounds like you're also part of the audience, and that's not necessary. From my opinion, you don't have to necessarily be a runner to treat runners, or the opposite is true too. Just because you are a runner doesn't mean you have to treat runners. You can, but these things are not mutually exclusive. Good on you. I've been a part of putting together a couple of races. It's easy, right? You just put up a finish line, you plot a course, right? And you're giggling right now because it's not that easy. So good on you. I've helped put together a 5K in a city, so there was some logistics, right?
Yep.
I don't even know what a 50K would be like. Like that feels like, I don't know if it's 10x harder, but it definitely probably has some similar logistics. But some different ones. So good on you for not only having that big idea. Listen, we have great ideas all the time. Mm-hmm. It's the execution, the actually doing the thing. And then anything that lasts for 10 years must be well done, or it wouldn't be able to support itself. So kudos on you for doing that. My next question is, creating things like that for active communities, what does that look like in practice now? How is it impacted now that you said it was a natural transition, I think you said, to private practice and working with her? How has it impacted, that with patients or athletes that now you get to work with in a similar but different context?
Yeah, I feel like it's, again, you're just so in tune with their world and what their goal is and why they're trying to accomplish that thing. And maybe it gives them some confidence that when they come and see you, like you just kind of know, yeah, this person
Get it.
gets it. Yep, exactly. And so the other part of it, that has been, I mean, it's kind of fun. Like this past weekend was a 24-hour race in
Oh yeah.
lacrosse. And yesterday I had 3 patients that all ran it, because that was like, they wanted to schedule something after that race,
Sure.
knowing something might not feel great. And so again, it's just people know you, they know that you get it. And it then also helps give you a unique perspective, right? So like, one of the individuals, they come in and they had this hip pain after a marathon, and they were then signed up for this 24-hour race. And it was like being able to have that conversation of like, how much is it really worth it? Like, what is the goal? Like, what is your long-term vision? And like, then they trust that you really get it and understand it. And so if you do have to be the bad guy and say, maybe you should back off a little bit,
Right.
I feel like they're less worried about you saying that, where I do get a lot of patients that come in and, they say, well, I don't want to go to PT, or I don't want to go see a doctor because they're just going to tell me not to run anymore. And I don't want to
Right.
hear that.
Right.
And so you can be like, no, that's not my goal. My goal is to make sure you can do it, but maybe we do have to back off or not. And you can have a good educated conversation with them, where sometimes, again, they might just tune you out as soon as you say,
Yeah.
oh, maybe we should back off, if you didn't
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah. Oprah said people want to be seen, heard, and understood. And if you
Yep.
do that, you build this connection. And that's really the only time is when you have a connection, can you be that resource? So you sort of started to answer part of my next question, but you mentioned people scheduling something before the event for after the event. Like, hey, I know something might not be, let me be preemptive here. But as a PT, you've actually believe and you say that PTs can play a big role in preventing chronic issues even before they start. You shared a little bit of example, but what other examples would you have of how you integrate that philosophy of preventing chronic issues before they start into your practice and community?
Yeah, that comes a little bit into some of the coaching stuff. So, again, actually, when I was in PT school, I started these group fitness classes essentially, that were targeted towards bikers and runners, to try to help give people some sort of like strengthening or whatever outside of the sport that they were doing. Because again, runners and cyclists maybe don't love strength training, right? Like that's not not everybody, but definitely a
Yeah.
higher percentage. And so I wanted to create some classes that people would feel comfortable doing, knowing again that I had that background in the sport. And so at our clinic, we do still run these small group fitness classes, and it's kind of a good lead in to like, okay, maybe you're in for patient care or something like that, but we want to then try to bridge that gap between PT and performance and try to keep you from having to come back in on the PT front if we can kind of keep you moving in other ways. And so that's kind of been a big part of it, is having these different group classes. But then at our clinic, we also realize that group classes aren't for everybody. So like
Sure.
we have a personal trainer on staff. I sometimes do like personal training with some people. More, again, they're just like, I need help with strength training and I just want to come in and you have a routine and I'm going to go through my routine. I just want you there helping to watch and stuff like that. And then we also will do some virtual stuff with people. So we'll actually like set up a program online. They follow it. Maybe they send some email check-ins and stuff like that too. So
Yeah.
just trying to reach people where they're at, what's going to work for them, and give them other opportunities to hopefully stay out of physical therapy and out of the medical system if they can
Yeah.
help it. Just because, again, it's typically, that's not what is done in a traditional hospital medical setting, right? It's like, okay,
Sure.
you're like 80% of the way there. Now see ya. Hopefully you don't screw it up. But we want to try to like bridge that gap, provide other opportunities, and then prevent people from having to come back or even having to see us in the first place. I know there's a few people that I work with that like, they're like, I'm nervous getting into running, right? Like I want to make sure I do it right.
Right.
I want you to help me with that so that I don't have to see you because I burned the match on both ends in 3
Right.
months in PERT. So
That's great. Let's shift to race directing. That seems like a unique part of your career. It's definitely not, maybe some PTs do it, but definitely not a lot. We saw how you got into it. You just said, hey, this feels like there's a community here. Let's build something that maybe you said, and I'd love to hear if I'm right or I'm wrong. It's just like, I'd love to see this event come to fruition. If no one's going to do it, I'll do it. So how did you actually really take the leap into saying, I'm not only going to say this is a good idea, I'm going to do it? And what's been the most rewarding part of organizing races for your community that maybe I wouldn't have known?
yeah, I mean, that's really what it was. It was a couple of friends getting together and being like, we have this awesome asset here. We should really showcase it. And I prefer trail ultra marathons personally. So like I wanted to bring one to lacrosse, hence the Hickson 50K that we have. Um, but and then it just kind of grew because of two things. One of them being COVID, really. So we had a bunch of events and races in the area, and one of my friends was kind of the main director or an assistant with a lot of them. And I started just volunteering a lot. So I'd go to the different races, I'd volunteer and just help out if I could. And then he, through some different life circumstances, was in a position where he was going to have to leave town. And it was really just career opportunity, right? So as he was transitioning out, all of these races were kind of like wavering on, do we continue or do
Right.
we, just hang it up? And because I saw the value in them, because I saw how it brought people to our community and also people in our community, got them outside and moving, I was like, I don't really want to see these like
Die.
staple events
Yeah.
go away. So like, I guess I could help. And then we have a local running club. So it's the River City Running Club. And right around that same time, I was becoming the president of the club. And again, it was kind of this situation where the previous president was kind of like, hey, this club has been around for a long time, but it's kind of tapering off and dying a little bit. So if we want to see the club survive, somebody needs to do something.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I was like, I guess I can help.
Yep.
And so, again, it was just not wanting to see this. Again, I love lacrosse and I love our community. I'm not wanting to see it
Yep.
lose these awesome assets. And so I took our running club, created the nonprofit. So before it actually wasn't. And then I started doing these events and filtering it through our nonprofit um, to make sure that they survived. And now I've added a few events. So I technically am in charge of like 10 different races.
Wow.
Which there was a question you had asked about time management with all of it. That's
Sure.
something I'm still probably working on a little bit.
Yeah. Aren't we all?
Yeah. But again, they're all just awesome opportunities for our community and getting people outside. And as a physical therapist, like that's what it's all about, right? Like, how can I keep
Okay.
people moving and active, prevent chronic diseases, and
Yep.
also like, again, it brings me a lot of joy, and I feel like it gives me a good like it gives me a good insight, but also it kind of keeps me motivated, right? Like, I don't know, I've heard PT burnout rates can be kind of high, right? And it's just
Yep.
healthcare in general. It can really drag you down a little bit. But if you are passionate and you show people you're passionate and you put a lot of effort into these different things, keeps you excited, right?
Yeah.
Like, it makes me want to come to work because I'm
Yep.
working with people, I'm talking about stuff that I enjoy. And then I also do get a break from it a little bit. And
Right.
I take a day off and I go and put on an event. And
Yeah.
I get to see people be really excited. And then sometimes you get to give high fives to people that, hey, I helped you with knee pain and now you're running this race because I got to help you.
So let me have you talk to someone else right now. I want you to talk to the person who is a physical therapist who's hearing what you're saying. They want to step out of the clinic and become more involved in the community health and wellness initiatives. Maybe they don't have to do it exactly like you. So we're not looking for like exactly how they do it, but maybe what advice would you give that person? Is like, I'm hearing what he's getting from his community and gosh, like, should I do that? I call it like the edge of the diving board, right? They're like, this sounds great, but like, maybe I'll jump, maybe I won't. What advice would you give that person?
I would tell them to definitely consider it. I talked about how it can be super rewarding. Um, if you are a therapist and you're like, I really feel like I'm struggling to see a certain patient population that I want, and that population maybe is someone that's more active or in the running community or whatever community you're looking for, like if you're part of the community, you go out there and you help put on things and people see your face, you're more likely to see those
Yeah.
people. I really do think that. Um, and then the other side of it, again, from a wellness perspective, I mean, I remember back in school, I mean, we had to do like a health and wellness project essentially in the community. It's a part of what we do and it's a part of what brings us joy and passion. And sometimes in the clinic, you just kind of get stuck in a routine that can feel kind of monotonous. And so if you can break it up and kind of get back to remembering that wellness side that maybe you were introduced to, but didn't really take a full leap, like you should go do it. It's hard. It's extra work, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not something that maybe initially you really get any sort of like financial reimbursement for. But I think the other side of it, the other joy and happiness and different things that it can bring you outside of financial gain is always worth it. Um, and so it's just that making that decision, that jump to like, hey, I'm going to go out there and I want to be part of the community because that's why I got into physical therapy in the first place is like seeing people be active and healthy and all of that, just go for it and do it. And then the other side of it, I think, comes, right? Like if there's a certain financial threshold that you need to make for yourself, like I think it all kind of feeds into each other eventually. And I don't know, you get what you put into it. And
Sure.
so put some effort into it and you'll, I think, just be a lot more fulfilled. Just go for it.
Good. You like this these two words together, and you're passionate about helping people climb above through your
Yeah.
coaching business. How do you approach coaching runners differently as a physical therapist? And then maybe what sets your program apart, or what things do you do differently because this is the way you decided to do it?
Yeah. So with like the coaching side, like that's totally, again, been a really cool way to kind of like help individuals, right? Because again, I get a lot of people that come in, they're like, I want to get back into running. I had this injury. And so it's kind of an easy way to like help build a program. And I would say the biggest thing and the thing that makes it unique is honestly like you get a high level of like communication, right? Again, a lot of times between visits with your therapist, you might not get to talk to them a whole lot. Or when you're doing some sort of virtual coaching, there's a lot more like email communication and things like that. So like when someone has an issue, instead of them making a decision of like, I'm just going to run through this, you can help them decide like maybe that's not the best idea. And I would say I play that police officer role quite a bit with people because a lot of the individuals, especially if they're trying to train for events or races, they're pretty driven
Yeah.
and they don't want
Yep.
to like be seen as a fail if they don't do a run or something that's scheduled. And so sometimes you just have to remind them like it's more about consistency. If you do this one run and then you have an injury, like the time off that you might have to take will be a bigger negative impact than missing the one run. I literally just had a client email me before we started talking, and he was like, he's coming off of a major back-to-back series of events. He did a 200-mile race, and then a month later ran a 100-mile race, and he's in his recovery phase. He's starting to run a little bit again, and he was like, I'm having some knee stuff. I'm going to go see my PT because I've worked with him in the past, but he lives closer to another guy that I recommended. And so he's been seeing this other therapist, and he's like, but I want to do my runs this weekend. And I'm like, dude, you just ran 300 miles of racing in a month. Just don't do it.
Right.
He's like, you're right.
Right.
But sometimes they need that little reassurance that they're not going to see a major loss of fitness or something like that to remind them it's okay. And yeah, so I get to play that role a little bit.
It's a great way. It shows that, PTs are physical therapists or other healthcare providers. We know a lot.
Yeah.
But really, it's the magic of not just how much we know, right? It really, you have to have built that relationship, not in the
Yep.
moment, but well before that, so that how you communicate or what you communicate based on what you know and based on what that person is telling you, it's going to be received differently. If you had no relationship
Yep.
with this person, they're going to hear exactly the same words differently. So the magic in what I think you just did in that email while we were, talking, wasn't actually what you said. It was what you did 6 months ago or a year ago with that person. And now that
Yep.
same set of words is heard and received differently. And that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah. And I think it's that level of accountability that people are looking for too, right? Like, but if you don't have a good rapport or they don't trust you, it is hard for them to want to listen. And it's established over time. I always I tell it to patients, but I also tell it to like people that come on as like coaching clients, like that relationship is not built in a month, right? Like a lot of times we need more time and consistency to not only establish a relationship, but also to maybe figure out what's going on or develop a good routine that's going to be kind of like your set of movements or exercises that'll help get you out of whatever state you're in. Consistency over time is your best friend with relationships, with PT, all of it. And if you jump the gun and jump to conclusions, you're just going to run into the same thing over and over and over again and get caught in a bad cycle.
Last thing we do here at Orthostatic is called WOW, Words of Wisdom. You can repeat an idea or a concept or come up with something new. Mic drop moment, soapbox statement, whatever people call it. What's your words of wisdom you'd want to leave with the audience as we wrap up?
Don't be afraid to take a leap and go out there. And if you want to help with an event, put on an event, do something for your community to get people active. If you want to take a step further and not just be stuck up in clinical care all the time, and you want to help people beyond that and whether that's through some form of coaching or whatever, like just do it, because we have a unique skill set, and it should be used. And it's something that I think is really, really valuable for our clients, for our communities. And so like, don't be afraid to, if anybody has any questions, to reach out or talk through it, because I just think that that's where healthcare should be going, is more and more into that prevention and how we get and keep people active, versus seeing people when they're already have had back pain for a whole year and they can't get off the bed. So let's get out there.
Great words of wisdom. Michael Borst, appreciate the time. Thanks for doing what you do in your community and just sharing that, because, hey, listen, if one or two people who are hearing us right now go and do that, that's a couple different communities that you've helped to sort of, affect and touch. So thanks for doing what you do. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.